You know, you guys, if we had to select one team and say that they stood out compared to the rest from everything we've seen so far in the 2023 playoffs, that team, at least to myself, would easily be the San Francisco 49ers. Because if you've paid any attention at all this year to the negatives, the positives, and everything in between that this team has had to deal with, you probably know that trying to predict at any point in the first half of the year that San Francisco would be doing what they are right now would have been quite literally the definition of a reach. Nonetheless though, what might just be the craziest part about all of this is that even with all of the ridiculous feats they've accomplished week by week on their historic run throughout the season, is that it might have took them until Wild Card Weekend for them to finally display what could very well end up being the most unstoppable part about their team. And well, as of right now, I'm not sure if anyone else is going to find an answer for how to stop it, so let's get into it. One sec though guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like the video if you do enjoy, subscribe, and turn on those notifications to never miss another NFL video. We're coming out with brand new football content every single week around here, and especially throughout the course of the playoffs, so trust me, you do not want to miss it. Now, to get back on topic with the San Francisco 49ers, even though the unprecedented situation they've dealt with at quarterback has taken up most of the spotlight for the entire season, and that of course is even further due to the phenomenal play we've seen from mystery relevant Brock Purdy since his takeover of the offense, but still it really doesn't seem to be mentioned enough that this was definitely not the only adversity that San Francisco had to take head on. Because whether you want to sit down and have a conversation about their quarterback, running back, wide receiver, or even their tight end room, there really just hasn't been a moment all season where you can confidently say that San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan have been able to operate on offense to their full potential due to injuries. But despite the insanity of this, the case can still be made that the 49ers had one of, if not the most productive offensive units in all of football this season. And honestly, what seems to be the most impressive part about this is that they were starting to hit their best strides as a team over the last few weeks, without arguably one of the most lethal all-around offensive weapons today in Deebo Samuel. And well, while his opening playoff performance by the numbers alone is probably more than enough to illustrate to you what his return can mean for this team, just trust me, there is much more to it than some of you might have originally thought. Because of course, while the impact on the stat sheet at least will almost entirely point to San Francisco's air attack, let's just pause for a second and shift this conversation over into the run game. Because as most of us are probably aware that while the Christian McCaffrey acquisition is currently sitting as the literal turning point in the 49ers season, and it's crazy that with every advantage he's added to this side of the ball, that we could still never confidently say we saw this portion of the offense at their highest level of production, again, until maybe this wildcard game. And I say this, one, on account of CMC finally seeming to have a full grip on Shanahan's playbook, which has very clearly resulted in us seeing their play calls heavily expanding almost every week, thus also resulting in McCaffrey's efficiency rapidly climbing week by week as well. And second, just the concept in itself of throwing Deebo Samuel into the ground game sets and formations, along with a guy of the caliber of CMC, isn't just a dream come true for Deebo's production, but the same can easily be said for literally every other offensive weapon on the field at the same time. And yes, I do know that even though we have seen a Shanahan offense with both CMC and Deebo on the field briefly at times already this season, I hope that some of you can agree with me when I say this, but this playoff performance we witnessed just felt different than anything else we've seen all year. And I say this in the sense of this combination simply showing us that there is no valid answer on how to put a stop to each and every one of their possibilities. Because whether Shanahan wanted to throw out motion sets with either guy being able to serve as the focal point of that said play, absurdly running out of I formation with Deebo serving as the primary back and CMC being split out wide, or even just the simplicity of having CMC act as the main back and having Deebo present one of the biggest distractions split out wide as well, it was just more clear with these guys than any other team I watched this weekend that once San Francisco finally settled into this game, that literally whatever they threw at Seattle, even if Seattle thought they knew what was coming, that no matter the situation, there's just too many weapons at Shanahan's disposal to close every potential potential window on any given play. And as you probably could have guessed, in terms of an efficiency standpoint on the ground, the numbers from CMC and Deebo back up the film and this point pretty emphatically. And even along with these guys, you cannot also forget about Elijah Mitchell finally being added back into this mix as well, who's continually served as a tremendous second option when healthy this season to avoid overloading Christian McCaffrey. And as we've seen so far in this postseason, that even when this team is at full strength, Mitchell's impact will still be felt. But even with CMC and Deebo in the backfield, clearly making San Francisco's ground game the primary focus for almost any opponent, this in turn, as I'm sure some of you have noticed, has pretty much forced this team to transition into operating as a pass-first offense. And of course, with just Christian McCaffrey's presence on the field alone, creating so many more opportunities for this to be slowly implemented, while it was working just fine with Jimmy G at the helm, many thought we were ready to see the ground game for the 49ers hit an all-time high in usage when we found out that Brock Purdy was going to be leading this team on a potential postseason run. But little did anyone know that it would take the third-string rookie quarterback leading the way for this team to hit their highest level of offensive output we have seen throughout the entire year. Because again, it's not like he's just stepping up and quote-unquote getting the job done, which is all the credit that some people out there want to give him, but he's very arguably been the most efficient and best quarterback in all of football since taking over. And while this is also personal opinion, he might have put on the best performance out of any quarterback in the postseason so far. And before you rush to the comments to say it, believe me, I know, and I've heard it time and time again, that this is essentially the perfect situation for almost any quarterback to get thrown into, again with a run presence as dominant as the 49ers, along with a wide receiver arsenal loaded with some of the best targets at their respective positions, in guys like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and even CMC as a nightmare in the flat end checkdowns, and also not to mention even Brandon Aiyuk, Jauan Jennings, and Ray McCloud being so underappreciated for their contributions as well. But even with all of this at their disposal, as we've seen with multiple different teams over the last couple of years, none of it will end up mattering if you don't have a quarterback that is built for the moment. From what we saw from their wildcard performance at least, he looked like he had been doing this for years on end. I mean, just the way in how he responded to his shaky start by hitting guys perfectly in stride in the second half and continually making the right reads in most of his situations. I mean, I'll just say that if what we witnessed in the second half is going to be any indication of the level of play that we're going to continue to see throughout their postseason run, that it's going to be nothing short of a nightmare to stop for anyone sitting in their way. But aside from this team's offense, if there's also any defense of the remaining teams in the playoffs that cannot be ignored, it is also, to nobody's surprise, the San Francisco 49ers. And I mean, of course, with their historically dominant numbers they had been putting up on this side of the ball almost all season, the bar is clearly high for what to expect of them down the stretch. But even when they seem off compared to usual, which is what you could say they showcased for a little bit of their postseason run so far, what sets these guys apart from the rest is easily their second half and even fourth quarter dominance that they just continue to display. Because following up the regular season, where this team had pitched 4 second half shutouts throughout the year, they also allowed one of the lowest totals in fourth quarter points out of any defense across the entire NFL. And of course, as you guys have probably already put 2 and 2 together from what we saw against Seattle, that it looks like almost nothing is going to change in terms of what we're going to see from these guys on the biggest stage. But will all of this end up being enough to have these guys walking away in the end as Super Bowl champions? Well, as always, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Nonetheless though, you guys, with everything we've mentioned so far regarding the San Francisco 49ers, I am of course also extremely curious to hear what you have to think about their current situation. So please be sure to let me know in the comments what was the most surprising part to you out of everything we saw from San Francisco's postseason debut, and also if you had to predict how far you see the 49ers making it in the playoffs this year. But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.